You know what, just to be safe thing, you did end up saving your bum later. I was at a sleepover as a kid. I was a little worried because my mom had been oddly tired earlier that day. I went home early because I was worried. By the end of the night, I, 14 at the time, had to call an ambulance for my mom, as she was having problems with her heart, and I was the only one there with her. She was incapable of forming coherent sentences, and would probably not have gotten the help she needed if I wasn't there. So, good thing I was. Learned CPR and first aid. Had to give CPR to a family friend when she collapsed from a heart attack, and thankfully she was brought back after being down for 15 minutes. She only had minor memory problems and mostly just couldn't remember that day. She's still here and kicking years later. I did this too. Learned CPR when I was pregnant. Seemed like a smart thing to do. A couple months later, my hugely pregnant bum successfully performed the Heimlich on a colleague. Was on a side-by-side vehicle mudding on some property a friend and I were visiting. Mid-ride, I turn to my friend and say, "Hey, you should probably buckle your seatbelt, just in case." Not 1 minute later did he lose control and slide front first into a tree, going about as fast as this thing could go, given the conditions. Both of us were okay, but the side-by-side was completely ruined. He looked at me right after, and his eyes were as big as dinner plates. Was delivering pizza in a sketchy block of town late at night. Huge apartment complex with multiple buildings. Walking up to the front door, I noticed a couple guys wearing dark clothing about 100 feet behind me, walking in my direction. Delivery was on the second floor, and by the time I reached her door, I heard the main door of the apartment complex open and close. She used a credit card for the order and tipped it in cash, so when I was putting the receipt into my bag, where I kept my cash, I actually pulled the rest of the cash out and stuffed it into my inner jacket pocket, just to be safe, leaving just the change I had that night in the bag. Started to head down the stairs back out to my car, and two guys jumped out from behind the stairs, and the one had a goon pointed at me and told me to give them the money. I quickly handed them my bag filled with quarters, and they took off towards the back entrance of the apartment complex. I never ran so fast in my life back to my car. I wanted to make sure I was as far away as possible before they realized they robbed me of $350 in quarters. I once had to explain to a guy that the motel he was staying in, despite being 1 mile from the pizza spot, was not a location we'd be sending drivers due to its reputation. He got angry, swore at me, and even threatened to come down there. Like, yeah, exactly my point. Also, if you come down here, we can definitely make you a pizza. God, that place sucked. You go right ahead and do that, sir. Grab your pizza while you're at it. Geez. You think people visiting from out of town would appreciate knowing they're in a less than savory neighborhood. Pizza place won't deliver here? Maybe I'd best keep my bum inside tonight. I dropped my high school girlfriend off. Then for some reason I locked the passenger door. Not 10 minutes later, I was stopped at a red light, and some suspicious-looking dude tried to open up the door. I have no idea why I locked that door after she got out. I really didn't have a habit of that. No idea what would have happened if that guy got in my truck. Something similar happened to me. I was dropping my friend off at home. He lived in a sketchy neighborhood. I had my driver's side door locked, and as soon as he got out, I immediately locked the other one. These 3 girls come running out of the bushes trying to open my car doors. One jumped on my hood and I ducking hit the gas. She rolled off my car. The other chucked her drink at my driver's side door. I'm terrified to think about what they were going to do to me. Snow chains at the bottom of the mountain. A bunch of cars passed me on a clear road on the way up with several warnings all the way up. I saw a local throwing on chains with no snow in the area. I decided to be safe and put them on. 30 minutes later, I was in one of the worst snow driving conditions I've ever seen. Whiteout conditions in a snowstorm that eventually resulted in the complete shutdown of the roads. I passed car crash after car crash with just enough traction to feel somewhat comfortable moving 15 miles an hour. Anyone heading to Tahoe needs chains, and chains that fit. Don't duck around. I don't care if you have a 4-wheel drive. Driving through Tahoe and Mammoth during snowstorms is no joke. Literally sunny, with no clouds to blinding white darkness in an hour. Edit. One more thing. If you find yourself near Heavenly and Siri sends you to a snowed-over hill that feels too steep, turn around. Unless you have the right setup, you aren't gonna make it. Snow chains or not, you will slide. Just take the Hara's gondola if it's that bad. If you don't already have your own gear, try another resort. Heavenly is uniquely bad for rentals and beginners in general. This sparked a memory from when I was in high school 25 years ago. My boyfriend, his best friend, and my best friend, ladies in the back, were driving in his Bronco, I think, up to Tahoe to ski. It was a 3-hour drive, and we had been partying the night before, so I was taking a little nap. I woke up with a panicked feeling and noticed Nick. My boyfriend wasn't wearing his seatbelt. I just started yelling, "Nick, put your seatbelt on, Nick, please." I started crying. He's like, "Chill, why are you being crazy?" His friend was like, "Just do it," to make her stop. So he did. 30 minutes later, we were singing along to the radio and hit black ice. The Bronco rolled about 3 times and landed upside down and spun. If it wasn't for a giant tree that caught the bumper, we would have slid off the mountain. Nick busted his shoulder. Most of the damage was on the front passenger side. We all had whiplash and scratches from stuff flying around the car, but otherwise walked away. There is no way Nick would have survived if he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. You would think he would have been grateful for that. But a month later, I found out he and my BFF were sleeping together because I wasn't ready yet. My stomach had some issues, and my doctor sent me for a colonoscopy just to get things checked out. They found 1 polyp, no big deal, not related to the current problem, and told me to come back in 5 years just in case. I put a Google reminder and forgot about it. 5 years later, I went for the colonoscopy, and they found a lot more and said I would have ended up with cancer in 5 to 20 years, for sure, had I not gone. Instead, they removed all polyps, and now I'm regularly going to colonoscopies due to having a syndrome they identified. I'm far away from the age where you normally get a colonoscopy, so I would definitely have got cancer. When you are eligible, or if it is recommended, get a colonoscopy. $5 breakage insurance on a rental surfboard. Broke that ducker clean in half in my first 10 minutes. Not my bum, but I was getting ready for school whilst Mum was vomiting in the bathroom. She said it was just a stomach bug and to just go to school, but mentioned her arm hurt. Something didn't sit right, so I called the ambulance from downstairs. They arrived and took her into the ambulance. She then proceeded to have 3 cardiac arrests and needed defibrillated each time. A double bypass later, and she was up and about within a month. Paramedics told me she would have died 5 minutes after I left, if I hadn't called. My dad lost his glasses once. He was going to just use his old prescription, but last minute decided to just go to the optometrist anyway in case something changed. Turns out he had a tear in his retina and was booked for surgery within 24 hours. It was bad enough they said he probably would have gone blind really soon had they not caught it when then did. Driving along highway and get a bad feeling with drivers ahead of me tailgating back to back at 70 miles per hour. I switch lanes to be safe and get further clearance. Not 2 seconds later, one of the cars ahead slams on their brakes, looked like no ducking reason, and the cars in my previous lane slam into each other, and one car that was behind me slams into all of them full blast. Cars go flying into the air Hollywood style, flipping up nearly vertical before slamming back down. I'd probably be unalived or have a lifelong disability if I hadn't moved. Avoid dumb drivers, kids. Keep safe distances and buffers whenever possible. Might sound ridiculous, but many years ago when I did my mandatory community service, was a thing in Germany as a counterpart to mandatory military service. There was a particular day in a pretty harsh winter. I usually went to work with my bike, as the streets were cleared of snow and ice anyway. At this day, I didn't take my helmet off, because when I arrived at the place I worked, I immediately started to shovel snow and didn't even walk inside first. My workplace was a huge and old 4-story hostel in the woods. The roof was packed with snow, and there were massive icicles hanging from the gutters. When a coworker asked me why I decided to look like an idiot with my helmet on, I jokingly replied it was for serious security reasons. A few moments later, an icicle block fell down and hit me on the head and the shoulders. The impact was so brutal that it made me fall down on my knees. Shoulders were bruised, but my head was fine. I really don't know what could have happened if I didn't wear my stupid bicycle helmet for fun that morning. Serious injury for sure. was watching my toddler nephew, and he'd found a metal straw somewhere in the house and started playing with it. He was just tapping stuff and waving it around. But I just read a story on Reddit about a woman who got completely ducked up by a metal straw when she fell, and it impaled her face. So I took the metal one from nephew and gave him a soft, squishy silicone one to play with instead. I'm not exaggerating when I say less than 5 minutes later, he fell like toddlers do, and I saw the silicone straw all smushed into his cheek. I had to just sit for a while after that, lol.